This video will show you how to analyze primary source documents and how to complete an opposing viewpoints assignment. When I analyze primary source documents, I use the acronym SOAPSTONE, which stands for Speaker, Occasion, Audience, Purpose, Subject, and Tone. The speaker is simply who wrote the source. And so if you were reading a document and you saw that Thomas Jefferson was the author, then you would write Thomas Jefferson. But why do we identify the speaker? It helps us determine whether that speaker is credible or not on the subject that they're talking about, and if they bring any biases to the table. If Thomas Jefferson was giving a speech on the Constitution or wrote a letter, whatever, about the Constitution, I would say he was a credible source. But what biases would he bring to the table? Thomas Jefferson is a Democratic Republican. He believes in interpreting the Constitution very strictly, or a word-for-word interpretation, meaning if the Constitution does not explicitly say something, then we cannot do that. And so we've identified our speaker. Thomas Jefferson is credible, but he does believe in small government and he believes in a strict interpretation of the Constitution. The next thing that we have to do is we have to locate the occasion, which is date and background information. If the date is December 10th, 1862, you would write that down. But what is our background information? 1862 lets me clue in on that this is during the beginning stages of the Civil War. Okay, the Civil War broke out in 1861. So our country is currently split over slavery, and there is a war going on. The next thing we have to identify is the audience. Who is intended to read or hear this source? It's very important that we are able to identify who the audience is, because we can identify different things the speaker does to try and appeal to their audience. The purpose is simply, why did the speaker write this source? What is the speaker trying to prove? For example, if it's a speech by Abraham Lincoln in his inaugural address of his first term in 1861 when he takes office, his purpose is probably going to be to persuade Southerners or South Carolina not to secede, or to persuade them that secession is unlawful. Our subject for this example would merely be secession or the Civil War or Lincoln's inaugural address. The subject is basically what it's about in general. The purpose is, what is the author trying to achieve with his writing or with his speech. The last thing that we have to do is identify tone. Tone is the author's attitude toward the topic. The author's attitude is expressed through the words and details he or she selects. For example, textbooks are usually written with an objective tone, which includes facts and reasonable explanations. So if you're reading a textbook and you soapstoned it, your tone would be objective, straightforward, formal. If we were listening to a speech by Winston Churchill where he told us that Great Britain would never, never, never give up or never surrender, those would be different tone words. Defiant, emphatic would come to mind immediately for me there for those tone words. Other tips, okay, number one, when determining the main idea or purpose, always go back and look at the title of the article. This is not always true, but be sure to look at the title. Sometimes it's helpful. 2, the quotes you're looking for is information that supports the speaker's purpose or main idea. When you do your opposing viewpoints assignment, you'll have to look for quotes, and your quotes have to back up what the author's purpose is. 3, always read the background information before the article. It gives a lot of clues for what you are looking for and helps explain what the article is about. Most of the sources I give you will have background information page, and it's very helpful that you read this because it will give you most of the information that appears in your SOAPSTONE. And so why do we do SOAPSTONE and read the background information? A lot of the sources that we're going to read are kind of Old English and very difficult to understand, so we have to know what we're looking for when we go into the source document itself. Number 4, you need to look up words you don't know. Circle them and write their definition next to them on the document itself. 5, you got to read it more than once. I'm sorry, but no one ever understood everything perfectly after reading it one time. Number 6, when you write your argument page, and we'll talk more about this in a second, you have to use relevant quotes from the speaker. Your opinion does not matter unless you back it up with facts. Also, be sure to explain what your quotes mean besides only listing the quote. This is an example of what an opposing viewpoints assignment would look like. You'll be given a packet with your viewpoints in them. You see right here it says Viewpoint 25A, and if you scroll down you'll see Viewpoint 25B. So you'll have 2 viewpoints, typically that take the opposing side of an issue. Then you'll have a blank page, that mine's already filled out for this example, but you'll have to SOAPSTONE your article, get 3 quotes to support the author's main idea, SOAPSTONE the second article, and get your 3 quotes, and then there's a final analysis page where you determine which author made the better argument. And we'll talk more about this page at the end of the assignment. Now let's practice SOAPSTONE. The first thing that we have to do is identify the title of our source. And so this is Indians should be removed to the west. And then I come over on this page and I write Indians should be removed to the west, so that I don't get confused as to what article I'm writing about. Next thing we have to do is we have to identify the speaker. It's Andrew Jackson. Okay. We know that Andrew Jackson is the President of the United States. Next, occasion. Okay, and so I'm not going to read this all to you, but this is all introduction, as well as this. The source on this opposing viewpoint doesn't start until the bolded letter here. But I highlighted the following here. It says, the following 2-part viewpoint consists of excerpts from Jackson's first and second annual messages to Congress given on December 8th, 1829 and December 6th, 1830. Okay? So my occasion, I wrote 1829 and 1830. And at this point in time, Andrew Jackson is already president. We know from our background info from class that the United States government is taking away Native American lands and relocating them. Okay. This highlight over here also gave us our audience. It's Congress. Okay, because it's a speech to Congress, but it could also be to different Native American tribes. You know, letting them know what his plan is. I was trying to highlight that. There we go. Says Jackson asserts the national government has no authority to interfere with the state of Georgia in its dealing with the Indians, and argues that the only viable solution is the removal of the Indians to lands west of the Mississippi River. Okay, and so Andrew Jackson's purpose is he's trying to get people to understand that our only solution to the Native American issue is to remove them west of the Mississippi off of their ancestral lands. Okay, that's his purpose. He's trying to persuade people that we have to remove the Native Americans from their land. What is our subject in general? It's just about Native American and United States government relations, okay, how the two entities are interacting with one another. And then you would have to read the entire source, and you can see where I've marked the different quotes that I was going to use, and then I copied those quotes in section 2, okay, over here. I'm not going to go through necessarily and read those to you because I'm running out of time. Determine the main idea of the source. You can just kind of draw your arrow down here. That'll be okay. So what you have to do is you read both articles, soapstone it, get your quotes, soapstone it, and get your quotes. Now the final part of the opposing viewpoints activity is the final analysis. You have to determine which author made the better argument, and you have to use evidence from the text to support why you think that particular author made the better point. The evidence are going to be quotes that you wrote down on the previous pages. I apologize for my handwriting, but let's read through this and I'll highlight where I used quotes, and then I will show you how I explained the quotes. But I said, both Andrew Jackson and the Cherokee Nation make excellent arguments on the issue of Indian removal. Jackson says that the Constitution declares that no state shall be formed or erected within the jurisdiction of any other state without the consent of the legislature. So I quoted him right there, a word for word quote. And then right here, okay, I explain it. Essentially, Jackson says that the state government has all sovereignty within its own borders when dealing with the issue of people's residency. So there ends my explanation of his quote. The Cherokee Nation points out that many previous presidents have recognized the Cherokee Nation as a sovereign institution. They also point out that the Holston Treaty of 1791, and here's where I quote, is the basis of all subsequent compacts, and in none of them are the relations of the parties at all changed. And so here marks my explanation. This means that the Cherokee Nation has always been sovereign to itself, and that when Jackson uses the phrase new state, it is incorrect because the Cherokee Nation is not new, and in fact precedes the founding of Georgia itself. So that ends my explanation of that quote, and I end it by saying Jackson is simply disregarding previous legal precedent. And so I simply stated that who I thought was who made the better argument, but notice that I used a direct quote that I highlighted, and following each quote I explained what the quote meant. Okay? You do not get points for just listing the quote or paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is good to do in different settings, but in terms of this assignment, I would like for you to use the direct quotes because I want to see you use the quote and then explain it properly. This concludes the video on analyzing primary sources and the opposing viewpoints assignment, but not every time that we do a primary source are we going to do an opposing viewpoints, but you still will need to be able to soapstone articles, okay, and be able to draw the main ideas from them. Please use this video throughout the school year if you have any problems analyzing primary sources.